Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas, where you'll discover how to best nourish your dog and yourself, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller. Welcome to another Fetch First Friday. Stacey and I are so glad that you're here with us. Today's episode is inspired by a request from our beautiful Fetch First Light community. As the days get longer and the sun gets stronger, many of you have been asking, how can I keep my dog mentally and physically enriched during the summer months, especially when I'm feeding fresh food? So in this episode, we're diving into creative, seasonal enrichment ideas that nourish your dog's whole being, mind, body, and spirit, while also honoring the energetics of summer and the unique needs of fresh-fed dogs. So whether you're looking to beat the heat, spice up your dog's routine, or just bring some more joy and intention into your everyday care practices, you're in the right place. Let's explore some soul-led, science-informed, and totally fetch-aligned ways to turn summer into a season of playful nourishment and connection for both you and your dog. All right, on that note, let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of our Fetch First Friday series. We are already in June.
How is that? We're 6 months through the year. How? I've no idea.
Crazy.
It's flown by.
Crazy. But for this month, we wanted to do a bit of a shorter summer flavored session for you. We've been getting a lot of questions both in our Fetch First Light Facebook group, and also I've been getting questions from you listeners writing in about different ideas for enrichment for our dogs, particularly the ones that are fed fresh food. There can be a lot of confusion about what you can actually do in terms of training, in terms of offering enrichment, etc., when you're feeding fresh. And we want to dispel those myths and let you know just how easy it actually is and the various options that you've got. But we also, because we are going into the heat of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, give you some ideas of things that you can do that would also enable indoor enrichment for when the temperatures are too hot to go outside. So that's what we wanted to do today, was give you just some quick ideas through the Fetch lens of how you can support your dog's enrichment through the summer.
Yeah, and there's loads, and I think by working it through the fetch approach just gives us some different things to think about and thinking about our dog as an individual. That just because there's, don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic ideas out there on Facebook groups and on social media and different sources, but again, this is why fetch is so important, because it gives you an actual opportunity to target it for your dog and make it specific for them. And yeah, it's good fun, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. So we thought we would start off with, first of all, thinking about obviously the food, the fresh food component of it. And one of the things that I get questions a lot, and I'm sure you get this too, around if you're feeding raw or you're feeding gently cooked, you don't necessarily want to be adding on to the calorie load by adding in a bunch of different treats, but yet unlike kibble, it's not as easy just to stick it in your pocket when you're going for a walk or doing training. So we wanted to kind of give you some ideas around things you might want to consider. And one of the things that that I find quite helpful that I was doing with Lucky too is thinking about the various components that are going into the meal and extracting elements of it to be able to use that for treats. So I've talked about before how I make Lucky's cooked food. So I cook his food in a slow cooker. And what I tend to do is, especially with the organ meats, is instead of actually cooking them into the food, what I'll do is I'll kind of keep them out. So I've got the portion out for the week, and then I will dehydrate those and use them as dehydrated treats throughout the week. So they're great for being able to bring on a walk, to be able to stick on a bat in like my treat bag when we're out and about, to have something to give him, or to be able to hide in his favorite toy, a sock.
One and only sock, yes.
And hide them. So that's one aspect, one way of thinking about it. But you can also purchase single ingredient, dehydrated, air dried, or freeze dried treats. So they're protein basically that's just been dehydrated or what have you, had the moisture taken out of it, and use them as treats. They're also really good if you've got a dog, if you're doing elimination diets, you're trying to better understand if there's a possible food sensitivity. Going the single ingredient route is super, super helpful because you can test. So if the dog
Absolutely.
has a
Yeah.
reaction, then you know it's that protein versus when it's multiple proteins in a treat and there is a reaction, you don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
those are one of my first easy things. And you can buy them or you can make them yourself. That's kind of my
And
first
I've
go-to.
just got a new dehydrator, haven't I?
Yes.
I haven't done it for years. I used to have one with I had Shadow and Ted together, and I used to do probably majority of their treats, and then I kind of got rid of it because I don't think it was actually working as well that I thought it should have been. But I've got a new one, and we've had a good couple of batches out of it, haven't
Yeah.
we? We've done really well, and both Lucky and Ted have really enjoyed them the last couple of weeks since we've been doing it again. So I've been doing what we've been doing is lung, spleen, and heart.
Mhm.
Because I'm looking from a TCM point of view about the systems that I'm wanting to support as well for like supports like. So yeah, it's been good fun. And it
Yeah.
is a bit whiffy, but it's windows open in the summer now, so you're good to
Yeah,
go.
exactly. And they're not that expensive. You can
Yeah.
get smaller dehydrators for what, like I would say like 30 to $60.
Yeah, mine
30.
was about 45 pounds, I think, but it's a really good one. I've been really impressed.
Yeah.
And I've got, I think on that last load that I did, I got some lungs. I got 3 trays of lungs out of it and then some heart and spleen. So it was okay, it's a bit gross, but because I did it as part of Ted's food prep day anyway. So again, I mashed that time together so that I could actually utilize the time when I was chopping and doing gross stuff. So I got it all over and done with in one go.
Exactly. And if you're wondering where to source those sorts of things, your local butcher is a great
Yeah.
resource. Ask them if they ever get those sorts of things in or if they can get them in, because oftentimes they are not going for the human consumption
Mm.
market, so they can set those things aside from you. You can order from some online raw retailers,
Yeah.
for example. You can order different organ meats and dehydrate them. When I was doing it, I didn't have a dehydrator, but I did do it in my
Yeah.
oven
Yeah.
at really low temperatures. But you have to be prepared to be at home like all day because it does take like 15 hours. But I would often combine that with if I was having a home day on a Sunday doing cleaning and all that kind of stuff. In the morning, I would just get that into the oven at a really low temperature. And then that would be my day. You just keep checking on it. So it's integrating into that. And it's also a massive cost saver.
Mm.
So if you're looking at how can you kind of create treats economically, plus you know what's going into
Yeah.
them, that's a really great route to
Yeah.
go because you can get organ meat super, super cheap. And once you've made the investment in a dehydrator, that's really the biggest
Yeah.
expense of it all, isn't it?
Yeah, I think because the last lot of heart and lung that I got was venison heart and lung from my butcher because that they stock it. So and they weren't going to sell the heart and the lung, and I asked what they could get me, and they said, yeah, I can get you organs. I was like, great, I'll take them. So I had a freezer full for ages, and now they've been made into treats, and it's fantastic. So I'm definitely back in the dehydrating world
Yeah, it's good.
now.
It's good. But then also there are some things that you can be doing. You'll probably see a lot on different Facebook groups about creating frozen treats. And we want to
Mm,
use give you a little bit of caution around that. It's going to be dog dependent. From a TCM perspective, anything super cold or frozen, both for humans and
mm,
for dogs, is considered to be detrimental to the spleen, to the digestive system, because basically the body has to warm the food up, which is taking valuable energy to warm the food up first before it
it
starts
can be
digesting it.
digested, yeah.
But I also feel like some dogs, we were having this conversation that like Ted being a warm dog versus Lucky being a cool dog, they're going to respond to that kind of thing very differently. Because
Yeah.
you've seen that Ted gets really quite warm and needs something to help cool him
Yeah,
down.
and he loves like a ice treat of some description to chew on, and I think as well for Ted because it does take it's one of the things that actually slows him down,
Hmm.
surprisingly, because he's actually got to work at it, and I use things like bone broth to freeze goodies within it, and I use like plastic trays or old yogurt pots, things like that, so that you can just make little treats. And I just put some blueberries or specific things that I know that are good for him. Or you could even put some of the dehydrated goodies in and break
Hmm.
those up and put that in with some broth and freeze it. And he loves them. And because he's having to work at it, he's probably not inhaling. It's not like giving him an ice cube that he's just kind of crunching and sending down. He's having to lick it and crunch it. So it's probably warming up a little little bit, I think.
Hmm.
But for him, it works. But probably for Lucky, I don't think it would be such a,
Less so. I mean,
yeah,
but again, it's kind of context dependent because
mm,
when we were in Mexico, even him as a cool dog was really struggling with that
yeah,
heat. So looking at his body is having to deal with the external environment as well. So
yeah.
I did give him bone broth ice cubes for him to kind of lick. But interestingly enough, he would often wait until they melted a bit to then go and
Yeah,
kind
because
of
it was
dive
too
into it.
cold
It was
almost,
too
wasn't it? But
cold,
he wanted the coolness,
but he wanted
but
the
not yet.
coolness.
Yeah,
Exactly. So that's where it comes down to watching your dog and how they
yeah.
do with that, and also seeing if it impacts their digestion. If you start to see upset stools or anything like that, I
Gurgly
mean,
tummies, that type of thing, then you'd be like, maybe this isn't working for them.
yeah,
So it might be that you can give it semi-defrosted so that it's like with Lucky. It
yeah.
might be that you just need to do that and that going completely frozen is just too much for them.
Exactly. But also a side note for some frozen things, if you've got a puppy who's teething, actually frozen foods can be really great treats for them, like frozen raw meaty bones or the popsicles or that kind of a
Yeah,
thing of frozen blueberries, frozen carrots. That, well, we don't necessarily recommend too many carrots because of the sugar, but maybe a cucumber, something like
yeah,
that could actually help relieve the gums. So again, it's targeting how you're using it and being intentional about
yeah.
how you're using it and seeing how your dog responds.
Yeah, and another thing that I've recommended quite a lot to people is you can get the air dried tracheas. Like you can either get like the little how big's that? 15 centimeters? Yeah, like
I think in inches, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, you can get them in various sizes. You can get them in 30 centimeters, you can get them in 15 centimeters, so dependent on the size of your dog, or you can cut the bigger ones in half. But you can even stuff some of, if you're feeding fresh, you could put some of their food allowance in there, or cooked or raw, and you could either freeze it or just take it out of the fridge and just put it in, and then maybe just plug the ends with some fruit, and then freeze it just for a little while, just to get some little bit of like coolness to it. Then they can go and munch it in the garden. I wouldn't do it in the house because obviously you're going to get meat in places, but in your carpet. But do it outside. You
Yeah.
know that this is the perfect time to do it. But again, when not in broad daylight, when it's baking hot sun.
Exactly, exactly. And something you might see a lot. So we're talking as well about being intentional with what it is that you're feeding. A lot of the recipes that I see online incorporate a lot of sugary things.
Mm.
So a lot of fruit, higher glycemic veggies, peanut butter. Caution on peanut butter. We don't recommend peanut butter for a number of reasons, but especially if you are going to use it, you need to make sure that it doesn't contain xylitol or birch sugar, it's often called. That's toxic to dogs. You don't want any sugar, molasses, any version of that. But a lot of dogs, even though it's used as, so thinking about what you were saying about sealing the ends of the trachea, peanut butter is used a lot for like sealing a Kong, sealing a
Yeah,
trachea, something
yeah,
like that. It's just not a species appropriate food. And a lot of dogs suffer with digesting it. It also has the propensity for aflatoxins from molds.
yeah,
It's not something that we would recommend. So if you are choosing to do that, we definitely recommend doing that with caution and seeing how your dog does with that. But an alternative would be like their food to seal it up.
yeah,
You could also, if they do well with it, like a Greek yogurt
yeah,
that has live cultures in it or a kefir.
yeah.
But again, only if they do well with that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can think of
No,
that you tend to use?
no, or you could potentially even get like frozen bone broth cubes and put them in
Yeah.
the end of the trachea to kind of plug it in so they get to chew through that, but then they get to their food. So I'm
Hmm.
just thinking like, oh yeah, you could
Yeah.
do that. But that would work because if
Yeah.
you got the little square ones and put them in the ends, that
Yeah.
would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, could do that.
You can also add in things like, say, shredded meat, for
Mm.
example. So if we're saying that we want to be cautious with the amount of sugary fruits and vegetables and stuff, like in small amounts, that's amazing. But we just want to use that with caution. So start to think about prioritizing proteins, for
Yeah.
example, in a bone broth, in yogurt, if that's appropriate for the dog, etc. And also you had mentioned about using different teas. Like a chamomile tea or a peppermint tea is another option
Yeah,
as well.
any of those things, I think, again, because if it can be frozen or even you could like almost do cucumber juice or something as
Yeah.
well, like juice something like that, or a watermelon, and you could freeze that into ice cubes as well and use that to plug ends or even plug the top of it because you can with the Kong if you have to be clever when you freeze it, but if you put it in a you can get the stoppers now. I can't remember what they're called, but you can get the stoppers
Mhm.
that fill the hole at the bottom. Always put a straw through the middle of it so that you've got an air pocket going through, but you could then put the stopper in the bottom. But what I used to do is just get a cup and
Mhm.
then just pour whatever the broth or whatever I was going to do in it, and then I'd just let it freeze, and then I'd just pull it out, and there'd be another lump of
Yep.
something at the bottom. So
Yeah.
whichever way you want to do it, there are ways, but you just have to get a bit creative in your freezer.
Yeah. No, definitely. So those are some ideas of so you can put in dog safe fruits and veggies, proteins, broth, etc. But you could also be using you can be using this in a targeted way in terms of thinking about like if your dog has like we were just saying, if they're struggling with a particular organ system, for example, you could prioritize the fruits, vegetables, meats, etc., that you're going to be using in the enrichment toys to support those liver systems or kidney
Yeah.
systems or heart system or whatever. So getting your TCM lens out, and we had mentioned in one of our blogs on TCM that we can share below as well. We use the resource of Four Paws, Five
Yeah.
Directions. That book is a really great book if you want an intro to traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, and they give tips for different foods
Yeah,
that
for
are,
different systems. And
yeah,
yeah, it's really it's our Bible. We
yeah.
just go to it all the time. It's our reference
No,
all the time.
exactly, exactly. So you could look at supporting your particular
Yeah.
dog in that way, or even from the perspective of if they're a cool dog, adding in even in the summer. So being cautious with it. So they are gonna, it's always in relation to what with TCM. So even Lucky in the super hot Mexican heat was struggling with it. So I would prioritize cooling things for
Yeah.
him, but I didn't want to push him into too cool. So I'd make sure he had warming things in there. And right now you're like eliminating anything warm
Yeah,
for Ted.
Ted's on a very I wouldn't say limited. He's still getting good rotation of proteins, but there is no venison, there is no goat, there is no lamb going in at the moment because he just doesn't cope. And I've seen the difference over the last few summers of when I've swapped it to how
Hmm.
he used to be during the summer. And I think it was only the other morning, wasn't it? It was only like 18, 90 degrees, and we were out on a walk, and he was already, you could see that that was getting too warm for him. So I'm going to have to get conscious about when I walk him and if I walk him that it will be really early. But then that's why I can incorporate into his food that I'm just working with duck, rabbit, wild boar. Yeah, that's probably about,
Hmm.
yeah, that and his fishes. So that's his summer rotation, just because that's who he is, and I know that he really struggles, and he would have the potential to start getting into hot rather than being warm,
Hmm.
because he does just feel the heat so much. Bless
Hmm.
him.
Whereas Lucky, even though it's warmer here, I mean, we're still getting acclimatized from Mexico, so he's still finding it not cold but cool. And when I've done a bit of self-selection for him of offering him different proteins, I even offered him it was goat and venison. He can't get enough of it, so he's still needing to warm himself
It's
up.
been
It
fascinating,
has
hasn't it?
been
Been
so
like
interesting.
really seeing the difference between, and he wasn't that sure on quail, was he? But we're
Right.
not sure if that was meaty, but it could have been an energetic thing as well. But it's been absolutely fascinating watching the dynamics between the two and having like literally the polar opposites in the same
Hmm.
house. It's like, oh my God. And like Lucky is not eager for food in the morning. He'll quite happily wait till after a walk, whereas Ted is the complete opposite. As soon as we're awake, that's food time. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's fascinating seeing how the energetic profiles are and present themselves. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
great.
Exactly. And so we also wanted to touch on different ways of engaging your dog that don't necessarily involve going for a walk.
Mm.
But before we do that, you had made a really good point too, sort of
Had I?
flipping back, you did to the food stuff of have a look, get into the habit
Mm.
of looking at the forecast.
Yeah, because that's something I'm going to have to start being very aware of now, just kind of looking ahead at the week and just seeing when those temperatures, because Ted starts to struggle anything, properly struggle probably over about 22, 23, which is not actually that hot for the summer. So that's when I have to think about when I'm going to walk, but also about what can I prep to have for him in the freezer, ready to give to him in the afternoon, or when he's starting to look like he's getting a little bit stressed or overheated. Even though I do everything to keep him cool, and he stays in the lounge, or sleeps by the front door where it's the kind of north facing part of the house, so it's much cooler, but he still struggles. So what can I do when I know that we've got a heat wave coming, or the temperatures for him, because I'm looking at him as an individual dog, if I know it's going to be over 22, 23, what can I have ready? So I think it's just getting a kind of tracking the weather a little bit as well, isn't
Hmm.
it? And seeing when you can make some time just to get some stuff ready. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be me now.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like this sort of speaks generally to the experience of particularly making your own fresh food,
Mm.
that it's not that it's complicated and it's not that it takes a lot of time. It's finding your rhythm
Yep.
and finding what works for you. So one of the things that would be helpful is like looking at what does your summer rhythm look like
Yeah.
and how do you then build this into your rhythm so that it's not something that becomes an additional stress for you, but it becomes something that's part of a sacred ritual for you. And that's going to look different for each and every one of us. So if you can kind of come at it from that lens too, of like maybe it's on a Sunday, you've got, you spend the afternoon or an hour in the afternoon kind of prepping stuff for the week for you and
Yeah.
your dog, or maybe you are doing it daily. It's whatever works for you, but it's worth having that in mind as you're kind of going into all of this and going into this season of what works for you. What is your particular rhythm?
Yeah, and finding what things they like as well. So doing trial and error to see which things they enjoy doing. Because some dogs don't like Kongs, they get frustrated with them because they can't get to the bottom or they just get annoyed with them. So is it flat, licky, frozen mats, or what are the toys and what are the things that they like doing? What are the flavors that they like? Which ones do they really enjoy? So a little bit of trial and error, but just it's fun though. I love doing
Yes.
it. I think it's great fun.
It
I
is
think
fun.
yeah, it gives me so much joy because then I get to see him like really tuck into it and he's enjoying it and he's cooling down. It's like giving the kids an ice cream, isn't it?
It
It's the same
is.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is the same kind of thing. And that kind of ties into, well, I'm going to leave a link to the podcast episode that I did with Nikki
Mm.
French, who talks about, and she has her book about don't walk your dog, stop walking your dog, and looking at, we have been kind of conditioned to think that the prime enrichment for our dogs is walking your dog. And there are many reasons why you may not want to walk your dog or take a break from walking your dog. And the summer is one of those times when you really need to evaluate it because so many people think, oh, it's not that hot out. Yet when you're walking with paws on asphalt, for example, like those temperatures are much hotter and
Yeah.
you risk not only burns, but you risk heat stroke, etc.
Hmm.
So I'll also link an episode to that where I spoke with registered veterinary
Mm.
nurse Rachel Bean about recognizing signs of heat stroke in your dog and how to put together a canine first aid kit for yourselves while you're out and about generally, and but what you can do if you suspect that your dog is starting to suffer from heat stroke. But there are so many things, and this is where food and enrichment is so valuable to us as pet parents. You can create alternative ways of engaging
Mm.
your dog that don't necessarily involve being outside. And one of my favorite things is snuffle mats. Lucky loves to sniff, and that has become even more apparent as we've gone on all of our different walks and he's been exposed to different environments. I'm getting to see like the extent to which he loves to sniff. And so that's information for me from
Yeah.
observing him in different contexts. That's information that he gets so much enjoyment from that. And right now he's literally laying across both of our
He is
laps as we,
Sparko because we did a
yeah,
really long walk this morning and to
passed
a
out.
part of the forest that he'd never been to, and he's just like, "Hello, this is amazing," and deer poo and all sorts of things to examine today. So it was completely different, but yeah, he's really enjoyed the kind of snuffling and sniffing thing, hasn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
So taking advantage of that. And that's where I would do something like taking the dehydrated treats and or the air dried treats and wrapping them up in, say, paper and putting them into a box, for example, where he's really got to work to get it out, or snuffle mats, or turning. I used to do this when we were in Mexico. I would turn a room into basically like a jungle gym for him, a sniffing
Yeah.
jungle gym, hiding things all over the place. And that was so fun for him. And it wasn't just about, like, I'd love to challenge the idea of enrichment being about just occupying our dogs while we're doing something else. I was really thinking about what does he really need and
Yeah.
want and enjoy. And in watching him do that, it gave me so much
Yeah.
joy as well. And it became something we could do together of like hunting these things together. So flipping the way that we're kind of thinking about enrichment, but making sure that we're engaging something that our individual dog loves to do, because not every dog does love to
Yeah.
sniff in that same way, but he does. So use that as his primary
Yeah. And
form of enrichment.
Ted loves to shred. So I quite often in the summer I'll start a box collection of different size boxes and brown paper from any deliveries or anything, and uh, he'll spend ages shredding stuff. He doesn't eat the paper, but I can wrap treats up really quite tight, and then he has to rip it and shred it. And my lounge looks like an absolute bomb site, but I don't care because it's just hilarious to me. I just think it's so funny. And for him being who he is, because walks have become, we had this discussion after the Nicky episode, didn't we? Because he is a dog that is very much in routine and very much enjoys his
Mhm.
walks. But I'm having to adapt and think about particularly this summer and moving forward, because he is 10 next month. So how is that going to change? And am I going to have to adapt and kind of almost support him to be able to not go on a walk? And what can I do? What will that look like? And it is, I think, going to have to be more about doing some of that stuff with him. And it's not because he can't do the walk, but it's just going to be too hot for him,
Right.
even in the morning, because he does feel the heat so much and so quickly. So yeah, that's going to be interesting for me this summer. I think that's going to be a real test of both of our patiences, because
Yeah.
you've seen him, he gets so excited. He is so vocal and excited about going out in the morning. It's become such a routine. And because and it goes back to Shadow, because when Shadow was at his most reactive, we would go out really early doors every morning, because that's when I would take him out to avoid all the other people and other dogs. So for Ted, that's just become ingrained.
Mhm.
So for me now, it's going to be a little bit of undoing that. So it's
Mhm.
going to be an interesting summer. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm excited, because I think it'll be really good for him, because I think I have got to be conscious now that he is getting older, and there
Right.
might be a day where he's a little bit stiff. So he can't go for a walk. I need to rest him. So yeah, it's going to be fun,
Yeah.
she says.
But it's watching your individual
Mm.
dog and even looking at things like, maybe you just do like some sniffy stuff in the garden, or maybe you're driving to a park and you're sitting under a tree
Mm.
together and having a picnic, for example. So you're bringing dog safe picnic stuff and maybe you're doing a scatter around the trees there and then you're driving back home. So it's starting to think about ways that you can support your individual dog. But I also think it's really important to make sure that we're building in things that are about enjoying one another.
Yep.
So again, it's not just about occupying them and getting through something. And I get it. There's an
Yep.
element of that. And we certainly have had to do that. And I still have to do that, right? But
There were treats given before this
there
episode
were
was recorded
there
to
were
chill everybody down again.
Exactly. But even like we've got, you probably see in the background if you're watching this, we've got some nice frequency tracks going on YouTube. And that's an enrichment activity for them to calm them down and root them
Yeah.
and us.
And it's been massive for Ted, hasn't it? Recently, we've been playing around with it, having it on during the day, because weirdly enough, I spoke to my acupuncturist about Ted, and she did his chart and a few other things, which was fantastic. It was so interesting. And she said to me root chakra was going to be really important for him, for who he was on his chart. And so I've been using a lot of root chakra kind of relaxation music. And one, was it Sunday we didn't put it on?
Hmm.
And he was so twitchy all afternoon. He couldn't settle. He was unset. He kept getting up and down. And I was like, but he didn't do that the day before. Oh, we hadn't put the music on.
Hmm.
And today he's much more settled and we've had it on. So I know it can sound a bit woo, can't it? But I don't think it is, because when we
It's
think about
both.
us being energetic beings, they're energetic
Yep.
beings. And again, I'm selecting it for him as an individual. So it might be that another dog gets on with some other types of tunes, but there are loads on YouTube. There's even like doggy specific calming music, and I think in the summer, if they like for Ted, this is going to be really important. I think this will be part of his routine for the summer, because if I can keep him calm where he doesn't, because when he gets stressed and that panting starts, because he's getting warmer, but if he stays calmer,
Hmm.
will he get stressed? So it's kind of chicken and egg.
Yep. And if you are interested in calming tracks, I'll share another episode that I did, the interview with Lisa Spector, who she's fascinating. If you've not listened to that episode before, it's definitely worth listening to. She is a Juilliard trained pianist who ended up working with different veterinary researchers around what types of frequencies,
Mm.
what types of music actually are soothing to dogs. So she participated in that study and she has her own track. It's called Doggone Calm, and you can stream it for free on like Spotify. I'll need to check where else it's streaming. That's where I listen to it on. But those are things that you can have on in the background, and you can use that for helping with separation anxiety. But also, and this is something to be thinking about now, both for people who are listening in the US as well as people in the UK, as we're entering into fireworks season. So
Mm.
it's an opportunity for you to get your dog used to different sounds as well and have some calming music on in the background and use treats to reward them
Mm.
as you kind of play low level fireworks sound, you start to increase it, etc. So those even can be that kind of training, can be a useful
Yeah,
indoor activity when it's too hot to be outside.
yeah,
That's both
definitely.
enriching to the dog, but also building their resilience and calming their nervous system all at
Yeah,
the same time.
love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Is there anything
You've
else that
always got a list.
we've always,
We've
I
always got a
know.
list of what we were.
Yeah.
We've done I can't even say it. Snufaris.
Snufaris,
Snufaris.
any
That's
kind
one.
of snuffling
Yeah.
thing. I think one of the things that we had talked about, and we've hinted at it here though, is how much can we make what we are doing with our dogs, whether it's the meal prep, whether it's the enrichment, whether it's any kind of activity, we turn it more into a sacred act and a
Mm.
mindful, presence filled experience rather than another to-do list, rather than something to check off the to-do list and making it feel stressful, etc. So, as this is as much about the practicalities of what can I do to give my dog some enrichment, but it's also about asking us to check in with our mindset and how do we support ourselves to do this so we're not burnt out, but also that we are present with our dogs and that we are doing things that become meaningful for both of us. So whether that's making a smoothie that you can both eat, for
Mm.
example, and sharing it with your dog, because that's a big thing. Like it's food is a love language between, especially when you're making your own food for your dog, whether that's raw or gently cooked, that it's a way of deeply connecting with them. And it's a way for us to honor their rhythms, our rhythms, the rhythms of nature, all of that.
Mm.
As abstract or esoteric as that might sound, I think it's really true. And I think it's a big part of what we are generally missing and craving. And it's part of the paradigm shift that we're talking
Yeah.
about with Fetch as well. So whatever that looks like for you, making sure that it works for you
Mm.
and gives you an opportunity to be present and bless the food, for example.
Yeah, and just enjoy it. Just like, because if you're enjoying it when you're preparing it, that's going to be in it,
Yeah.
from an energetic perspective. If you're looking forward to preparing it and knowing that that stuff's going to be there for the week because you know that there's a hot week coming ahead and you've got a busy week at work or something, but you know that the dog is going to get something that they enjoy and it's going to help them calm down and help them relax, and that helps you relax as well. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a win-win for everybody, which I think is lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah, we like win-wins.
we do.
We do. I just doodled because I was just thinking, but I was just thinking about other ideas of things that you can do and things that I've done in the past that have always been really successful. I used to have, sorry, a upside down table. What they called, like what are they
Like a
called?
folding table?
No, it was like a little not a bedside table, like a coffee table. That's the
Okay.
word. Sorry, I got there eventually. I've not had enough coffee today. Upside down coffee table, and I used to put a snuffle mat on the bottom of it. I'll see if I can get some photos and I'll put them in the group or something, or on the Fetch Instagram. But I used to have an upside down table. I'd put a snuffle mat on the bottom, and my husband had drilled holes in the legs, and I put a rope around the outside, and then I used to put spinny bottles and a Kong that was threaded through it, so they had to bat it. They loved it. It was brilliant. It was one of the best things I ever did. Don't even know why I came up with it. It was just random idea, but it just, and then I'd put boxes around it, and then and like you'd said, it was creating like this jungle gym for them in the house, and they absolutely loved it. Crazy, but it was brilliant. And I did a similar thing in the garden as well. I had a hanging rack, like the ones you can hang over a door, but I had it over my fence to dry my washing. But in the end, what I used to do was hang bottles over a paddling pool that had balls in it. So they'd have to bat the bottles to get the treats out. Then it would land in the ball pit, and they would have an absolute whale of a time. They loved it. But again, both of my dogs loved that.
Mhm.
Some dogs would get frustrated with that. So it's adapting it to your dog and where they are. And if you're just new to introducing that type of activity, I'd start slow and gently rather than kind of jumping into kind of like Olympic level
Right.
enrichment, because there's steps within that, and not all dogs enjoy like the batting of bottles because of the noise, and they've got a sensitivity, whereas my two were quite boisterous and like, yeah, come on, let's go for it. But other dogs aren't going to be like that. So just adapting it and just looking and thinking about how can you use your garden if it's shady, if it's got a cool spot? How can you use that in the summer so that if they can't get a walk, but they can still get out and get some fresh air and just stretch their legs and have a play? But how can you do that? And of course, if you've got a spaniel, water, paddling pool. Because they love, well, it's not just spaniels, but a lot of dogs.
Yeah, but that again is like speaking to the individual dog, because we were just having the conversation on the walk this morning about how Ted will find any bit of water to get in and go swimming, and Lucky just watches him like, he's not interested. Yeah, his idea of like going swim as we call it is like getting his feet wet, and then he's like, I'm done. So it's finding what works for your dog and meeting them where they're at with all of that as well. But is there anything else that kind of pops up?
No, I don't think so. I think that just suddenly came to my head. I'll try and find the photos and I'll share them on our Facebook, and I'll try and find the video of the table as well, because that was good fun. It's just a different idea.
It is.
It's just something interesting to play around with.
Yep. Yep. And also one other thing that I was thinking about is, we've talked about this before, is self-selection. Like you can create different boards of like, say, herbs or foods or whatever that they sniff out. We often talk about it in the context of sort of them self-soothing or finding what it is that they need. But there's also a real massive enrichment experience of that, like an exploration, expose them to new things. So that's something else to think about. And I'll link the episode where I talked with Rachel Knott of My Animal Matters about this as well, because there's some ideas in there that might be useful to you. But we'd love to hear, what do you guys do? What are your favorite enrichment things that you've found that your dogs like, and different tips and tricks that you can share? So either you can message me on Mystic Dog Mama at Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama, or also why don't you come and join us in our Fetch First Light Facebook group? It is a free group that we have set up for like-hearted dog guardians like you, where we talk about all these kinds of things about having, lives with dogs, but through the Fetch lens, and how that can be helpful for you to both navigate various challenges you might experience with your dogs, or figuring out what works best for them, what works best for you, but having a supportive community. So that is on Facebook, Fetch First Light, but I'll leave the link in the show notes if you are interested in joining us.
Yeah, it's great. But yeah, come join us. It's good fun. And we have a monthly live on there, don't we, where you can come and ask us questions.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Exactly.
Very good.
So thank you so much. We hope you have a wonderful start to your summer, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining Stacey and me. We hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you have a better idea of how you can include some fun and playful enrichment ideas into your summer. Get in touch and let us know what you try out. We would absolutely love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on our new Instagram account, which is at learn.fetch. We also have some great new free resources on our website, including tips on natural flea and tick prevention, how to make an immune supporting bone broth, and easy energy healing practices to do with your dog. You can find them all at learnfetch.com. And like we said, come join us and other like-hearted dog guardians in our free Fetch First Light Facebook group. We would love to see you there. I've left all of these links in the show notes. All right, until next time.